Hello, Jamie, and welcome to the Profitable Designer podcast. Before we start, I would like to ask you to introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure. Hi, I'm Jamie Brindle. I have a creative production agency with my wife in Los Angeles, California. We do a lot of video production, animation, motion design, things like that, amongst some other stuff. And then my job on the internet, on social media, is I give practical freelancing tips to my fellow practitioners, fellow freelancers. We talk about, how to build a sustainable freelance career, how to work with clients, how to get paid more freelancing than you ever would in a 9 to 5.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, I found you through that profile and through your Instagram, which is amazing, and your reels. I can't stop watching them. It's always like,
Well, thank you.
okay, watch
So
again,
your
watch
world
again.
views are
Where is the
coming from.
beginning?
Got it.
Yeah, so can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started in freelancing?
Yeah, I started pretty early. I started when I was 17. I'm 33 now, so somebody do the math on that. But I started when I was in high school. I went to a specialty school that taught me how to use a camera and how to use editing software. And I quickly devised that I could turn that into money instead of doing the typical part-time jobs that teenagers do. So when I was 17, I was going door to door in my local community, asking people if they needed a television commercial, and then I'd go, film the commercial and then go buy the airtime on the local ABC or CBS or Comcast or whatever, because that was back before digital video was a thing. I remember making a presentation years into my career trying to explain to people how they could use video on Facebook or video on the internet for an ad, and that was a novel concept. So that's how I got started. And then after college, I moved to Los Angeles because this is where the film and TV people live. And to subsidize my filmmaking career, I leaned on freelancing again. That's and really made an effort to build it in kind of an intentional way, whereas before that it was more just a gas money thing.
Yeah, and were you ever thinking about like I don't even know how to say that, but kind of like growing out of freelancing in a way of like expanding into an agency and maybe hiring other freelancers to work for you, or you always want to be a freelancer? And whoever's listening this, there's nothing wrong with any of the choices. I'm just saying that some people would prefer to work in a team and maybe hire people under them and be more of an agency, and then some people would prefer to be the decision maker and to do everything on their own.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong answer. Everybody's got different priorities. I think when I first started freelancing, it was the autonomy and just kind of the ownership over my schedule, over my income, over who I got to say yes and no to that attracted me. And since over the years, we've grown from working with kind of mom and pop shops. And when I say I'm talking about me and my wife, Courtney, who's in the other room working right now. But we've grown from working with mom and pop shops to some of the biggest brands in the world, some of the top 10 brands in the world. And in those instances, we have kind of our merry band of freelancers that we work with and we subcontract. So yes, we do, we scale up and down depending on the size of the job. But yeah, there's something about that ownership. I'll tell you an anecdote of, so a buddy of mine has a post house in Burbank. It's like a 3-story. It's where, films and television shows go to finish, to edit, to color grade, to do the sound mix and things like that. And when we started really working with some interesting clients and thought about growing our business, I called the owner, my friend, and said, what's your advice? And he said, don't hire anybody. This is the guy who owns a post house who has maybe 50, 60 people on salary. And his first, I was hoping for some gem about working with clients, and his advice was don't put anybody on salary. Don't because then that becomes your job. Your job is making salary, versus if you work with other freelancers, then you can flex. You can grow your team or shrink your team depending on the size of the project that you're that you're working on at the moment. So that's kind of been our guiding principle in terms of the size of our team and how we do it, how we manage it.
Yeah, I love that because that's exactly how my branding and design agency operates as well. We are a floating agency, which means that we hire based on the needs and based on the size of projects that we get. So we don't have anyone who is on a salary. We do have people who work even 40 hours for us, but they're all our contractors and they're
Yep.
flexible. They don't have work hours and they can create their own schedule because that's something that's very important to me that they all have flexibility and freedom because they're
Same.
all freelancers. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like you want this for everybody, and I think that's the trade-off that people because a lot of folks when I kind of tell them that that's how we're doing it, they go, well then, what's the guarantee that your preferred collaborator is going to be available when a job comes up? Because if that's the benefit of salary is they're always on your time. They're sitting around waiting for whatever it is you need them to do. And our answer to that has been to just develop a pretty deep bench of subcontractors over time. This isn't, you can't go do this in 2 weeks, but like to develop a roster of people that we know we like working with, that we know we can trust. So it's like, okay, if this person isn't available, we go to this person. If they're not available, we go to this person. And then like we've got that, we've got 8 names on each list of each need. So we know eventually, somebody that we like working with is going to be available. Hopefully, knock on wood.
yeah, exactly. And not all projects have to start by tomorrow. So you can always find enough,
Yep,
contractors for the project. So I know I
absolutely.
wanted to talk about pricing with you, but before that, now that you mentioned that you started working with mom and pops, like smaller clients, and then you like went to the levels where you were working with larger companies, like how did you get there? How did you even start getting clients?
Oh man, it's such a long journey. It's the simplest answer I can give, and then we can put more detail and context on it. But the simplest answer would be I networked my way there. I networked my way from A to B, and it took, again. I've been doing this for 16 years. We didn't really start working with, your Netflixes or your Googles until about eight or 9 years into that journey. If not more. So it's a matter of, okay, you work for this restaurant in your local community. Great. Then you go work for the law firm that represents them. That's a little bit of a bigger law firm. Great. Now that law firm works with this company. That's a little bit of a bigger company. And you can solve a problem for them. Now you work for this company, and you know that they do business with it. So it's like you slowly amass, the network that allows you, to work with some of your dream brands, your dream clients. And again, the same way what we're talking about with the with freelancing versus agency is, you don't, if it's not a goal of yours to work with a Fortune 500 company, like don't feel obligated to. For the most, we have clients that nobody will ever hear of that have paid us way more than Netflix or Google has paid us. So it's like that's, they're fun to talk about. They're fun to put the logo on your website, but oftentimes the clients that are worth the most to us, to our careers, are like random B2B logistics companies, or cybersecurity agencies. Think people that, or companies that most people don't even know that industry exists, let alone brands to work with.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And like when I started freelancing, my goal was to work with large companies and large corporations. And then, few years, like 5, 7 years later, when I finally got there, I realized that that's not what I want because there were so many decision makers within the company and the project that could have been done for like in 2 months. It was over 8 months just because I'm
yeah,
not getting feedback, because they're talking between themselves. And it was just that's when I realized I actually do not want this. I don't want to work with a lot of companies, but I also didn't want to work with like super small companies. So we are now like somewhere now like in between. We now work with mostly health and wellness product-based businesses who've been in the business like 3 to 5 years. They're looking to rebrand. So they're looking for a new brand strategy, visual identity, labels, packaging. So they have enough money to afford the next step, but they're
Yeah.
not just starting and they're not large companies. So I still work with CEOs, with managers, with the founder and owner of a company. And that's something that I just prefer, but everybody has their own preference.
It's super key. I mean, it's the ability to work with the decision maker makes life a lot easier. And it's true. The kind of more quote air quotes here for people listening, the kind of more sexy brands and companies are often the messiest kitchens. There are so many people doing so many things. So it's a lot of there are a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and so your job becomes a component of your job is like diplomacy, almost like politics, so it's like, and you've got to account for that, and also account for that in your billing. Folks who are wanting to work with them, just go ahead and bake that into your fee, that you're going to have to deal with that stuff too.
Exactly. And that's something that a lot of freelancers forget about. They're like, okay, so this project is going to, cost this much, but they don't account that the project will go back and forth and you'll have a lot more revisions, even if they're not much, like, even if they're not really necessary, you'll still
Oh, for
get
sure.
them because
For sure.
you'll have at least 20 people working on the same project with you.
And they won't all be entering the conversation at the same time. So, it's not necessarily only edits, it's overhauls. Where like halfway through the project, they bring in the EVP of communications or whatever, who goes, "Why the hell are you guys doing this? You should be doing this." And then everybody starts from square one again. But the deadline can't change, so that you got to account for all that.
Exactly. And then you have to wait until they agree to the next steps internally before they even talk to you. And it's just, but again, maybe someone would love
This
that.
could be the whole podcast. We could just be us complaining about these brands.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so you were talking about like how you started getting clients a long time ago, going for networking events, things like that. But what would you say, like, how would freelancers go around finding clients and getting projects right now? Like, do you have any tips for networking and building relationships with potential clients? Or maybe it's not even networking, maybe it's posting on social media.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't. Yeah, social media was not the asset it is now when I started. If I were starting now, I would be all over social media. Like that's for starters. But for in terms of lead generation, when you're just getting started, I did this on accident, and now, with the experience and knowledge that I have, I can kind of explain why this worked. I started working for a niche industry without realizing that's what I was doing. I hadn't heard the term niche down, and I know that's all over the place now. But when I first started filming, like I said, I'd go door to door and ask every business in a strip mall if they needed a commercial. Which is a terrible way to do it. I'm not doing any research on if this is actually a solution to a problem they're having, and you know, I could go on, but eventually I found myself at a business conference. I was filming executives, and I had like my list of questions that I was supposed to ask them, and I realized that this is an industry that wasn't getting a lot of love from the video world. And so I was filming like it was a short film, and everybody else was filming, on a tripod, just getting their shot, and with an old camera, and not really thinking about lighting and composition. And so I was filming it in an interesting way, and I cut together the reel from that event, and then somebody at another event saw what I did and said, "Hey, who did that for you?" And they go, "Oh, this guy, whatever." So they hired me to do that, and then at that event, I met an agency that does events. And in just that little anecdote, I've explained to you why it's so important to niche down. Because so somebody saw me solving a problem that they have, and they go, "Well, that's the exact thing that we want." It's very easy for them to imagine this end result for them, because they too are a B2B event. And then I was able to network with people that were trying to solve this problem at scale. Again, a very specific niche issue. You know, and so it's the concept of niching down is great for lead generation because you know, it allows you to kind of put yourself in those positions where you're networking and where you're interacting with fellow freelancers as well, complementary freelancers in that niche, you know, agency clients in that niche, brands in that niche. Too many people try to go out and boil the ocean and they just say yes to any job. I need money, I'll take it. Versus like, let's focus on this little pot. Let's put this pot on the stove and boil. Let's worry about boiling that, you know, and then you can slowly grow the balance of your niche, which is what I did. And, you know, we still work with some events. We still send crews out all over the country to film things. But it's definitely not our primary source of revenue any longer.
Yeah, so basically, your tips for freelancers who are looking to find clients would be to find their niche, at least for now, so that they know where their ideal clients would hang out and then go there and find them.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, it gives you a heading. It says, okay, there they are. They're the clients. You know, so many people. I know you get this DM often, probably as well. It's like, hey, where do I find leads? It's like, well, what's the problem you're solving for who? You know, if you don't know where to find leads, then you haven't answered those two questions specifically enough. You know, if you've done the work of finding a specific problem for a specific person to solve, then you know exactly where that person is. You know, and they'll be excited to talk to you about it because you know it's a problem they're having.
Yeah, exactly. And especially if you have your niche when it comes to an industry. So, for example, if you want to focus on, I don't know, healthcare professionals, you will know exactly where they hang out. You will
Yeah,
know if they're on Instagram or they're on LinkedIn or they Google or what, or they go for, you know, local networking events that are all about healthcare and wellness and whatever. Like you will know exactly where they are. So as soon as you know who your ideal client is, that doesn't mean you're excluding the rest. It just means you're intentional about your marketing.
yeah, yeah. It's, you know, and you learn to speak their language. You'll learn their grammar. You'll learn, you know, it's so you can be a better strategic partner more quickly. But yeah, it's definitely it's you'll grow as if you niche down. If you're a specialist, you'll grow in 2 years in the time it would take a generalist who doesn't have a niche 8 years to grow. It's like that important.
I've been there.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. This
I've
is
been,
learned experience, guys. Like this is stuff that yeah. Like it's an easy mistake to not make. So it's like we're trying to save you from making this. You know, it's like I always say it's like I'm trying to save you from some of the dumb mistakes that I made. You know, like some of the avoidable ones. I can't save you from all of them, but that's a very avoidable mistake.
exactly. When I started freelancing, I was posting on Craigslist. So Craigslist was the thing at that time.
Yeah.
So my main source of clients was Craigslist and some networking events, but I was going to 3 to 5 different networking events per week. It was like my
Damn.
part-time because I was a graphic designer for everyone and anyone who would hire me, and I would charge like $200 for a logo. So of course I had to go and meet a lot of people.
Yeah.
Now, if we are looking for clients, and even when we are not looking for clients, I'm an extrovert. So if I'm at home for too long, I have to find an event and go somewhere, do something. So
Yeah.
I go for 2 events per month and I get way more clients than from those 3 to 5 because these 2 events are CPG events, so consumer packaged goods, and it's
Yeah.
exactly who our target is. And it's so easy.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then again, that doesn't mean we're excluding the rest. I'm still working with a lawyer that I really enjoy working with, and it has nothing to do with a product based business.
Yeah. Well, yeah, those, I mean, yeah, you don't turn down work if like those people find you, you know, it's just like, this just gives you, it's a very easy target to hit, you know, it gives you a goal to try and score.
Yeah. Okay, so something I heard you talking a lot about on Instagram mostly is pricing. So how do you determine your pricing as a freelancer? Like, do you have any tips for our listeners who are usually brand graphic and web designers on how to set their prices?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the first one, I mean, you know, step one is we don't bill hourly. And I would highly suggest that others try to move away from an hourly billing model if they're on it and go to flat rate because then you get to charge for your value and the conversation is that of a it's more of a strategic partnership discussion than anything. So it's like I had a conversation with somebody you know that's in our freelancing program yesterday about about they were talking about the what's the word I'm looking for, like the polish of their product. They were also video editors, and I said, see, the problem with that is there's always going to be somebody that has a better camera, or that has a better, it's like, that's, you don't want the conversation to be, you want about it the conversation to be about getting them from A to B the most effectively, or if you're making a TikTok video, for instance, you're not like, you're going to almost be penalized for filming a TikTok ad on a Red or an Arri Alexa camera. That's a fancy camera for you graphic designers. And those ads are going to get swiped right through. You want to film those on an iPhone, so the conversation can't be about Paul. Okay, so what is it about? It's about your expertise, and it's about the strategic partnership. It's like, hey, let's talk about your goals. Let's talk about what success looks like to you, and then let's talk about getting you there. All right, it's like, let's not talk about how many hours it's going to take to get you there. Let's not talk about, it's just like, do you want me to solve this problem for you or not? Yes, great. Well, let's get to it. So flat rate allows you to charge for your thinking in addition to your time. Your time is one line item in on an invoice. And then in terms of how to come up with that number, I touched on it just a little bit just then. Is okay, let's start with your overhead, right? So it's like, that's what it costs you to do the thing. And then in addition to that, your value. I'm going to tell you how to get all these figures in just a second. Since your overhead, as you add up software, rent, subcontractors, time, that's how little of a component it is. Gear, equipment, travel, things like that you can calculate what it's going to cost to get this job done to your business. Value, you calculate by asking questions about what success for this project means to their business, right? The analogy there is if a local cafe asked you to make a poster for them, and the same day Warner Brothers called and asked for a poster for the next Batman movie, it's the same job. That's the same. If anything, Warner Brothers might, depending on the cafe, it might be less edits. They might be more hands off than the cafe owner is. They're the same job. It's the same input. It's the same overhead, but it's not the same value, right? Because the cafe is going to take that poster, increase their foot traffic, and maybe generate a few extra grand that month. Whereas Warner Brothers is going to take that poster, if deployed correctly, they'll make a few extra million off of that campaign. So you're not going to charge them both the same. And then the last factor that I would put to price is your experience, because with experience comes you've seen enough problems to where the shorthand to get through the problem. You've got a big enough network to where if something needs to be addressed that's out of your specialty, the guy who is the specialist, right? That you can bring in. It's those kind of intangibles, and so that's the pricing equation that kind of amounts to is it's overhead plus value, and then that figure times expertise times experience. So it's a little abstract, but the point being, a lot of folks, when they say, well, what's your rate, what's your fee, the answer is different for every project. That overhead number is likely going to be similar depending on the hourly input. So it's good to have that number handy for you internally. It's good to have I can't go below this number, right? So it's like, anything under this is going to be uncomfortable for my business, but that number is your floor. It's not your ceiling. You need to have the conversation with the client first about how they're measuring success, what success for the project means for their business goals, and then make a calculation, hopefully during that conversation, well enough to give them a bracket, a kind of a range of what it could cost, so that you guys can chat budget on the call, which is a whole other topic that we may or may not chat about here, is how to have that conversation. But that's how I think about pricing. It's not, we're not selling a product off the shelf here. Another good thought exercise that I do sometimes is, if I asked everybody watching this or listening to this, how much they pay me to solve their biggest problem right now. You know, we'd get such a smattering of responses. It would be anywhere from nothing to, millions, and every number in between. And that kind of illustrates the point I'm trying to make here, which is, you've got to charge for your value to the problem you're solving.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes what I see with, so when web designers try to figure out the value-based pricing, it's a little bit easier because they can see the outcome. They can talk about conversion rates and, they can see the value that they're providing for their clients. But
Yeah,
sometimes when you're a brand or graphic designer, so graphic designer, yes, they can work on posters and the example that you used, but for
yeah.
brand designers, so if you're designing a logo, selecting colors and fonts and like that's it, so you're a brand designer, how can you determine like what the value is? Because you can design the best logo ever, but if that company doesn't do anything with it, like if they don't focus on marketing after you, if they don't develop a good looking website or packaging, if they are product based business, there is almost like no value, right? So how do you determine, how would the brand designer determine the value that they provide for clients?
Yeah, I would say it's not your job to determine. That's their job. So when I'm on a call with a potential client, that's the question I ask them is, how are we scoring this? What's this going to mean for your business? How do I know I've done a good job? And they say, well, if you've given us a great logo, it's like, okay, but like give me a metric. Like, what does that mean to you? What does a great logo mean to your business? Oh, it's something that we could do, X, Y, Z. Okay, let's go a little more detailed there, and then, well, what would a bad logo mean for your business? It's like, and you're just trying to have this conversation. I always say, I'm just trying to get on the same sheet of music before we talk tactics and talk budget and talk schedule. It's like, I want to really make sure that we're on the same sheet of music about what this means, to your project and how you're measuring success for it, and you get them to say it so that you're not, because you don't want to be in the position where you're trying to explain to them how valuable a logo is. Let them explain to you how valuable a logo is, and then once those words have come out of their mouth for 45 minutes and you've got 15 minutes left on the call, then it's hard to argue with yourself. Like if they've just spent 45 minutes talking about how valuable this thing is, then you go, okay, like now let's talk about budget and schedule. So it's not necessarily, I think that's a lot of folks think that they have to audition on those calls or they have to do a lot of explaining, and it's more so just doing a lot of listening, and then at the end of it, talking tactics.
Yeah, exactly. Because I remember when I was first starting, and every time when I would have a sales call, which now I don't even call them sales calls,
Yeah,
now it's
yeah,
just a conversation. But on my sales calls, I would always be like, and I also include the logo design, and you get this many revisions and this many options to choose from, and this and that.
yeah,
And I'm like so focused on the deliverables versus on the results. And I was the one talking versus now. I literally have like list of, I think it's like 7 questions that I don't even know them like on top of my head. I just like open the document and I just like ask a question and then I wait. And they're talking. They're convinced, not even convincing, but they're talking to themselves why they need me. If
yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah. It's tough to argue with yourself. It's because I think that that's also that sets you up for success in many different ways, aside from just pricing. For the most part, and I've been on both sides of the fence. Again, like we hire freelancers so it's like I can see this from both. It is, for the most part, in my experience, freelancers don't do that. They go right into deliverables. They talk about their process. They talk about, and it's so refreshing when you get on the phone and you feel like somebody's got you. Like they're, you know what? It's like, before we even tie, like, I just want to know, like, how do we get from A to B? What's B for you? Okay, cool. Is it this? Okay, great. All right. I know what we're gonna do. Like, so it's not so much about them like selling me package, the gold package, the silver package, the platinum
Yeah,
package, the tiers. That's not. It's like, just put yourself in their shoes. It's like, it's human to human interaction. A lot of people have made an entire industry, an entire career out of making this more complicated than it needs to be. Otherwise, to justify their existence. Like, at the end of the day, it's people talking to people about something that needs to get done. You know, they, what are their concerns? You know, how do they know? How do you know you've done a good job? What are they looking for? Great. That's it. That's the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And even now in my branding and design agency, we have one offer. That's it. We don't have the silver, gold, and whatever
Yeah.
packages. Like we don't have those. This is your goal. This is what we do, and we're gonna help you. You know, providing our services, we're going to help you go from A to B, from where you are at the moment to where you want to be. And it doesn't matter what happens in between. If you're going to provide 10 logos or one, which I mean now is one, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's really, they actually don't care about the logo, they don't care about packaging, they don't care about the website, they care about the end result, which is usually either more revenue in their business, or even if it's just confidence or satisfaction or whatever it is, but that is the end result that they care about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's, you know, I always say that the stem or the root of most freelancer client communication troubles is that the freelancer is speaking freelancer and the client is speaking client. And you being the one who's being paid, you have to figure out how to speak client. And the client's language is ROI. If you can explain to them how any decision relates to their ROI, they'll thumbs up. Great, keep going. You know, so it's just like if you can frame this conversation, you know, in the frame of return on investment, you're it's going to be a very easy, frictionless discussion. And also, I guess on one more thing on the you know, on the subject of talking money with clients is they're looking to you to make a recommendation. I think that that's a lot of, because you know money is so personal to freelancers because it's how we pay, you know, our rent and pay our mortgage and you know, put food on the table. But to a brand or an agency, money is an asset to be deployed, and it's likely that if you ask them for their budget, they've taken a guess. You know, like they're like, well, like, it's probably going to be, versus you saying this is going to cost, like, in based on the goalposts that you've described, based on the mission we're trying to accomplish here, and you know any other inputs that we've discussed, it's going to cost between X and Y. You know, that's what they're looking for, a recommendation. Okay, now if that's too expensive, great, let's talk about a smaller version of the idea. But like, it's on you. Like, you want to drive the budget conversation and the pricing conversation. You don't want to, because too many people, even if they bring up a number, it's, you know, okay, well, let's talk about the project first, and then let's do this again in 30 minutes, you know, like, because yeah, you want to drive the budget conversation.
Yeah, definitely. So, what would you say that are some of the, and we mentioned some, but do you have any other examples of like some most common mistakes that you see freelancers make when it comes to pricing their services or talking to clients about prices?
Yeah, let's make a list and then go in detail. Let's try and find like three good ones. I'd say the first one is that they don't want to talk about it in person, so they send an email instead of talking about it on the call. The second would be that they price themselves too low. I think a lot of people severely undervalue what their service. And then what would be a good third? A good third common pricing mistake. I don't know. What do you think? You got? Am I missing anyone?
Yeah, I'm just thinking now about how freelancers usually focus on the deliverables, but that's not really pricing. But it can be, because then focus their packages based on the deliverables, and they price
Let's
them based on, if I provide two logos, it's going to be 2,000. If I provide five logos, it's going to be 5,000, when the client actually needs one logo.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So let's do that. Let's, like. All right. So okay. So the first one was what they're not talking in person. Second one is they're pricing too low. Third one is they're focusing on deliverables. So let's try it. Let's knock them out. So the first one, they're afraid to talk about it in person. Um, Interesting news. The clients are too. So, like, you know, it's, nobody really likes talking about money. So if you're comfortable talking about money, it's a relief. You're doing them a service. You're doing them a solid, you know, then and there before the job's even started. So, you know, get very comfortable talking about money. I liken it to, you're having a conversation with your friends. about how much you want to spend on a night out. It's like you're all at the house trying to figure out what the plan is. Are we doing a fancy Michelin star restaurant and and cocktails kind of night, or are we going to get some fast food and go find a bar? Like it's we're just trying to figure out what kind of night we're trying to have here. So it's like that's a good thought experiment. If you're uncomfortable talking about money, is hey, we're just it's just an asset. It's the same way you would ask, hey, do you have any colors, any brand colors I need to use? Do you have a font I need to use? What type of packaging are you using so I can, cool, like we're going to talk about budget. It's just the same as it's an asset that we're gonna discuss. But here's what it does for your business is if you wait until after the call to send an email with a budget, then you've taken yourself out of the room for probably the most important part of the conversation, right? So you could send the email and they could receive it, 20 seconds later, read it and go, perfect, that's the exact number that I wanted. And then forget to respond to you for a while. Or they could read it and go, that looks right to me. I'm going to send it to the boss for approval and not respond to you and tell you that's what's going on. Or they could read it and say, whoa, that's way too expensive. We're going to go look for some other people and maybe get back to this person later and not respond to you and tell you that's what's going on. Like, so there's like all these things. And so you're left kind of like, waiting on the other end of that email, trying to figure out what's the holdup. And, and you're going to take a pot shot or two. 3 or 4 days later, you're going to send them an email and maybe try and address what you think might be the problem when really it's not. Start negotiating against yourself when they've already decided it's a go. They're just waiting on the boss to stamp it. Like you solve that problem by being in the room for that conversation. If you if you give them a budget range and they say that's perfect, then great. Okay, let's talk about the next steps. Good, let's get this out of the way so we can start. If they have an issue with the number, then you really want to be in the room for that conversation so you can explain to them, some of the, hey, okay, well, that's for the version of this idea that we discussed, that's the number. But if we did X, Y, and Z, we could get it into the ballpark you're looking for. What do you guys think of that? Do you want to move forward on that number? Would that be comfortable? So it's all this is to say that you want to be in the room for that conversation. You don't want to punt on, just because you're not comfortable talking about money.
Definitely. You also don't want to even start working on a proposal if you know that there is no way
No,
they can afford you. You don't want to waste your
absolutely. That's a
time.
great that's a great point. It's like it's free work. Yeah, it's you don't want to waste time, precious time, especially for your business doing something that isn't going to lead anywhere. Just because they're being nice or they didn't feel like responding to your email.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the second one was you're undervaluing yourself, and I think that especially folks who are just getting started, just at whatever number you're thinking of, add 25-50% to it. You're way undervaluing yourself. A good experiment is to kind of keep raising your rates when you're trying to figure out what your service is worth. Just keep raising it like exponentially on each job until you start getting a lot of no's, and then you're like, all right, that's about where I need to start my pricing. But a good way to guard yourself against it throughout your career would be to pitch a bracket for budgets instead of just one number. That way, you're always kind of doing a little exploration. You're always doing a little research anytime you're starting a new project. So you can say, yeah, we typically clients, with projects similar to this, they're either they're in the 10 to 20,000 range. Does that sound about right? Or they're in the, you can go even wider. You can say they're in the $20,000 to $50,000 range. Are we in the right ballpark? And that's how you get the client to give you a little intel. So they can say, yeah, that sounds about right. So now okay.
Or they would at least, start talking, well, we were thinking about 10 to 12. At least you know where they're at. And then even
Yeah.
if you're working on a proposal later, you know what you're going to include and what you're not going to include. And sorry for interrupting, but I just want to give one example of, so it was a long time ago, I was working on this one supplement company and I charged around $5,000, which wasn't bad, like for a
Yeah.
label and a logo. And I was planning on asking them or basically offering, like, if they need a website design, kind of like upsell. And I was planning on like charging 3 to 4 thousand, but I asked them if they have someone who's helping with the website, and they said yes, we hired someone. And then I learned that they paid $25,000 for the website, and that was like I was shocked. I was like, okay, so this is where I can be too.
Yeah. Yeah, we recently had that never stops, by the way. For like
Yes,
I'll still be like,
definitely.
oh, they charge what for that? Like we recently because we don't do website development, but we were helping a client with a website, and we mentioned it with at dinner with a friend of ours who works at a big agency here in LA, and she was like, and I forget what we were charging. We charged like 10 grand for it or something like that, and it's just like a little little landing page, and the our buddy was like, yeah, we just signed it was like one of the big flower companies, and they charged them 250 grand for their website. It's like, and yeah, I'm thinking, okay, like and I'm sure there's somebody who's charging more than that for a website, because
Exactly.
it's a big e-commerce site, like where it's like you're not just building a website, you're building the show floor, you're building the warehouse, it's just all digital. So there's a lot of value there. But yeah, I mean, presenting a bracket helps kind of sniff that out, helps, or get that detail out into the light. So, if you give them a wide enough range and they say that sounds about right, then it's probably a number in the middle there. If they say that's pretty high for us, then you have to have the conversation about scaling down the deliverable a little bit. And sometimes people don't believe me, but sometimes they'll say, "Oh, that's it? Only that? I thought it was going to be way more than that." In which case, don't give up. You get to say, "Well, if there's more of this asset to deploy, there's an even more effective version of this idea that's gonna, like if you've got more money to spend on it, I can 10x that spend with this." So um, regardless, you're having that conversation, and you're not undervaluing yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. And what was the third one when it
The third
comes
one was
to
deliverables.
deliverables? What
Yeah.
would be your example? Because now I feel like I talked about like logos and websites and all that, but what would be your example when it comes to like maybe we can talk about some other like specialties when it comes to freelancing?
Yeah. I mean, I think like, well, give me a good one for you with design, and then I'll think of something random based on some conversations I've had with other freelancers that are in neither of
So
our industries.
So the good one with design is, and I can give you my example of when I was on
Yeah.
Craigslist. So I had like, I don't even know, it was like basic, premium, or a luxury package, something like that. And so the first one was you get 2 to 3 different logo designs to choose from. You get like fonts, colors, 3 revisions, and I think like kind of like a timeline or something was like 2 to 3 weeks. And then the next one is now I offer 5 different logo designs, 7 revisions, and maybe you get it faster, but I don't remember, or something like that. And that
Yeah.
one was so the first one was $480. The second one was 720, I think. And then the third option was I included like a stationery or a flyer or something like that. And that one was like 980.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, like, yes, I added extra things. So, yes, it should be more expensive. But I feel like I was, not that I feel like I was just focused on how many things I can provide versus like the end value that the client is going to get.
Yeah. And that's like, like, as you're mentioning it, I'm like, a lot of when I have these conversations with folks, a lot of them are do design and brand identity, because there's a lot of temptation there. Like that's an industry that is rife with different things to develop. I some copywriters have similar things where it's like content copy, where I'm going to do a blog post and X amount of social media posts and scripts for this. And, it's you keep having but yeah, it's like, it goes back to, and it's kind of a beginner impulse, or maybe not. I'm not using the term beginner pejoratively. It's just like, I think with experience, this, uh, this changes a little bit, but I think it's an impulse to want to justify how expensive again, air quotes, how expensive you are, you know, as opposed to letting the client do that for you. You know, it's like, you know, if I know you mentioned this earlier when we were talking to deliverables, it's like if they don't need a freaking, you know, like then why pitch it? Like why even, you know, so it's like have the conversation. You guard yourself against that by again having the conversation where you define success for the project. What does mission success look like? You know, and if part of the, you know, if a tool that you want to use to get them to mission success is a flyer, you know, then by all means add a flyer to, you know, but like, but yeah, don't assume that. That's the value of that conversation, because if you start, you know, the conversation pitching, and this is even in the unspoken conversation that you're having in your website language or your social media, you know, if you've got your three-tiered packages on your homepage or whatever, you know, that's how you're starting the conversation. If you start the conversation assuming that, you know, they want XYZ, you're setting yourself up. You're like, you know, you're either going to come off as salesy or pushy or amateurish or like you don't know what you're talking about, like none of which are good things for, you know, for a potential strategic partner to be demonstrating. So you just ask the questions, just wait until you know how they're measuring success, and then go about the business of making some strategic recommendations.
Yeah, exactly. And I can see how in some cases the quantity matters. So, for example, graphic designers who offer social media posts like designs,
Yeah,
you have to put a quantity of that. You can't just be like, oh, I'm going to provide all social media designs and my price is, I don't know, $3,000 a month. Okay, is that 5 posts or that's 55 posts that month?
yeah,
So you kind of still have to say what you're going to deliver. But again, you're not going to charge per, I guess, like per hour or per each post, or I don't even know
yeah.
how that.
Yeah, and you say what you need to deliver after you know that's something they need. I think that's the key. It's like it's not saying don't talk about deliverables. It's saying don't talk about deliverables until you know that it's something that they're actually looking for, you know, or
Exactly.
maybe not that they're looking for because they might not know that it's something they need. But if it's something that you know that is going to solve their problem.
Yeah, definitely. Well, this was great. I enjoyed chatting with you.
We could do
Is there,
this all day.
yeah,
Yeah,
right?
this is.
I was
We
like,
need to
okay,
do
so
a
it's,
part two real soon.
yeah, exactly. I was like, okay, it's been an hour, so I'll bring you back on next month.
Yeah, yeah, let's do
um,
it.
yeah, so yeah, well, thank you so much for being here. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
I mean, if you're just starting freelancing or you are thinking about freelancing, you know, I think you're thinking correctly. I mean, I might be biased, but I feel like now more than ever, you know, is there's never been a better time to be in business for yourself. I think that a lot of the things that we were taught, um, you know, growing up about the safety of the 9 to 5 are, yeah, like this. I mean, you know, it's no longer true. You know, a lot of it's like working for a company and working for yourself, not that huge, you know, in terms of safety, there's not that much of a difference, you know, and folks will always say, well, you know, what about corporate benefits? And I was like, hey, I got freelancer benefits, man. You know, I set my schedule. You know, there are years where, I mean, I think my record is like a 4 or 5 year streak where I doubled my income every year. Like I don't know a 9 to 5 that's going to make you that offer. You know, it's complete ownership over your destiny, and it's, I mean, that means you got no one to blame when it's not working out either. But the freelancers like that, they like that
Exactly.
responsibility. Yeah,
Yeah, I love that. Okay, well, thank you, Jamie. And before we end this episode, could you please share where our listeners can connect with you, such as your website, LinkedIn, or Instagram?
absolutely. Yeah, I am on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You can just search my name, Jamie Brindle. I am the Jamie Brindle on Instagram because someone else has Jamie Brindle. And then yeah, we've got our freelancing program that we open up membership a couple times a year, and that's really fun too. It's what we've started having. You know, I think our second launch is going to be this is breaking news. It's going to be next week. So it's yeah, and
Yeah.
so that's fun for us too. So find me on social and we'll chat about that.
Yeah, and you also started your newsletter recently,
I
right?
did. Thanks for reminding me. Yeah, we're the newsletter. We're on newsletter 5. Yeah, so subscribe to the newsletter. Link in all the bios.
Yeah.
And that's yeah, we're having a blast with that. It's a good opportunity to go more in detail on, than a 15-second TikTok will allow, or a 15-second Instagram video.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, thank you so much, and I look forward to releasing this episode.
Yeah, I can't wait. Thanks for having me.
Okay, yeah, thank you.